Yep. That's right. All right. So this is the Harriet Tubman Junior Senior High School. This high school that you are looking at, as far as your eyes will cover and as far as your eyes will reach, is the first and only school. That's right. The first and only school that would take black students all the way to the 12th grade in Howard County. If you was on the front of this, if you was outside looking at the front of this building, you'll see on the bottom right-hand side, right where the brick is, it says 1948. That's whenever ground was first broke to be able to begin building on this space. Okay? And as you see, right on the wall behind you all are all the classes from 1949, the very first year that it opened its doors, to 1965, which is when the Howard County Public School officially integrated. You do the math, Brown versus Board of Education comes in 1954, and so 1965 is when Howard County Public Schools integrated. It took 11 years for Howard County to officially integrate. Whenever this school was forced to close in 1965, it was open, students were coming here. The school board would not dare entertain and honor the idea of white students, white parents, and white families entering into a black colored school. So what happened? They closed this school down and right next door built Appleton High School. That is what we say is desegregation. And yes, there were schools in Howard County prior to Harriet Tubman Junior Senior High School. Majority of them were colored schools sprouted around in different parts of Howard County. Bushy Park, Daisy, Alpha, Savage, Laurel, Guilford, Jessup, or so on and so forth. But many of these colored schools only went to, say, 3rd or 4th or 5th grade. And then Cooksville comes, and that takes students a little bit further, but it was this school here that provided students, black students from all across Howard County, with an accredited high school diploma. What I have here is an old school attendance sheet from 1912, and it's from Highland Colored School. And I wanted to think about this. When we look at this attendance sheet, you see the different ages. 10 years old, 9 years old, 8 years old, 11, 8, 9, 11, 7, as low as 6 years old, and as high as 13 years old. But here's the thing. As one who spent time in the public school system and with what we know about education, if you have a 6-year-old in a classroom with a 13-year-old, you're basically talking about an elementary school student in the same class as a high school student or an older middle school student. So we're talking about these one-room schoolhouses, these segregated color schools that only went to 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade. They were overcrowded. So whenever the roof was leaking, and they wrote letters to the school board about the roof about to cave in and the roof leaking, they would respond and say, just put a bucket underneath and keep on moving. So we're talking about historic inequities and historic challenges. But one of the things that I want us to reflect upon in this conversation is the resilience, is the overcoming, and the triumph. So the fact that this building is still standing is a testament of the alumni and those who are movers and shakers and those who organized and rallied and devoted themselves. Shout out to the Harriet Tubman Foundation, those who were former students here, who helped pave the way to commemorate and preserve this historic space so we could do what we're doing today. All right? So the Harriet Tubman Junior Senior High School. So this whole building right here, this was a step up from not having an outhouse. This was a step up to go from the schoolhouses and the places that these black students were at in Howard County. For orientation, I think it was said that students had to learn how to use the toilets They had to learn how to use certain things because they didn't have that where they were accustomed to using. Having lockers. So did they get all that they deserved? No. But they still, as you can look at these pictures and look at these images and look at the clippings and the write-ups and how they commemorated everything, you can still see that they were beaming with pride. So this here is the exhibit, In the Light, the history of African Americans in Howard County from slavery to desegregation. I think somebody in here earlier mentioned oral history. So they say, when an elder passes away, a library burns to the ground. And I want to just share with everybody that history is always talking to us. History is the name of street signs, the names of schools, even our own names. So where does our name come from? Where did we get it from? But if we look here on this map, we see the names of some of these plantations, and this is not all of them. But we see the names of some of these plantations in Howard County. Reagan Manor, Farley Quarter, Carrollton Hall, Oakland Manor, Waverly. So these are the names of some schools that are in Howard County. Courtesy of Maryland Center for History and Culture, this right here was a slave inventory that I have from Reagan Manor. All 313 enslaved beings. So we're talking about being dehumanized. We're talking about no rights, being considered chattel. So we're talking about something that happened here in Howard County. And I always say, I love Howard County. I grew up in Howard County. Howard County is supposed to have the top resources, top place to live, schools, libraries, so on and so forth. That's great. But we also have to acknowledge all aspects of the history, not just the part that makes us feel good and the part that makes us want to celebrate. At Harriet Tubman and at Cooksville, both places, and Cooksville from 1935 to 1949, and then you see Harriet Tubman picked up from 1949 and went to 1965. In both schools, they knew they was not going to get much. And we know that students had to walk to school, rain, sleet, shine, whatever. And whenever it was cold, they had to stand around the potbelly stove and warm up before they got to their lessons. All of the fundraisers, the fish fries, the dinners, the baby rallies that you see here in this picture, the PTA, paying for the uniforms of the team and paying for all the stuff, it was often the community. Because once again, they knew they weren't going to get much assistance and support from the school board. What you see here is referred to as the Three Musketeers of Howard County. Because these three pioneers, Mr. Elhart Fleury, Mr. Woodson here, and Dr. Silas Craft were the three champions of black education. Morris Woodson, he was a superintendent of the colored schools in Howard County. And Elhart Fleury was the assistant principal to Dr. Silas Craft. Dr. Silas Craft was the principal, all right? He started off here at Harriet Tubman. Then when he left, Elhart Fleury replaced him, Dr. Silas Edwin Craft. He was the loudest champion of black education in Howard County. Herman Charity, who I said to you all a few moments ago, who was the first African-American police officer in Howard County, said this man was a Martin Luther King Jr. of Howard County. Those were his words. Dr. Silas Craft didn't take any mess. He didn't play. He was a no-nonsense kind of guy. And from what I understand and from what I was told, he literally burned books that were given to the students that were hand-me-down books. Oh, wow. So Silas Craft didn't play. And whenever he would walk around in this building, he would tap students on their shoulder. What's the Negro National Anthem? What's the quote from this black scholar? So they knew when they walked around him, they had to straighten up. That was Dr. Silas Craft. And I'm honored to say that I represent the Silas Craft Collegians program of Howard Community College. The program has been around for 25 years, and this year in 2025, we received the Dragon Spirit of Excellence Award for the work we're doing in the community. Silas Craft, a pioneer and a trailblazer of excellence. He was on the NAACP, and right over there in the corner, there's all the other presidents who have served on the NAACP in time. And you see one white individual right here. His name is Robert Kittleman. Now, some of us may know his son, Alan Kittleman. Well, Robert Kittleman, who hails from Ohio, came here, and he was a politician, and he was looking for some votes. Dr. Silas Craft and his team caught wind of it. So they came knocking on his door. We hear that you're new in town and that you need some votes. Mr. Kittleman, who came from Ohio, said, well, yes, I do need some votes, sure. So they said, well, you help us get a school, you'll have your votes. And so they worked in tandem, hand in hand in the NAACP, and that was one of the building blocks to helping this school get established that we're standing in right now. This right here was where the first commencements and graduations took place. Of course, it's a gymnasium, but anybody who knows anything about basketball, this is far from a regulation court. So the black community had to oftentimes make do with what it was granted. Of course, there were no glass backboards. And it's funny because I remember when I took one of my class in here a couple years ago, and one of the young men, he looks around, he's like, where are the bleachers? And one of the alumni who came here put his arm around his neck and said, son, we stood up and watched the games. No white schools wanted to play the black schools. Yet, this was a place of organizing. This was a place of reunions. This was a place where fundraisers took place and concerts. This was a gathering place. There was meetings. There was civic organizing. This was far more than just a gymnasium. But across that stage, those parents and those children, those family members were so proud to be able to have a stage. That was quite a step up from where they came.
Let legends give well. Let us work with all our will to make this school greater still. So each day we can proudly say we both come and high on her way. Harriet Tubman, we love to dream of you. Harriet Tubman, you're the model